When my daddy died, we had nowhere to go. My daddy didn't own a home, and he did own 2 milk cows, and my mother kept those milk cows. And I would learn to milk cows, milking those 2 cows. Little boy, milking cows. And my aunt thought that there was something working to get me and this girl together. And no way could we ever cross trail. We couldn't cross each other's trail. Until one day I had gone to Sunday school at a Baptist church. And my mother's brother was married to the mother of this particular girl. And so it was that they needed me to go with them to take the mother of the girl home. And I rode with them, and they asked me if I would go with them and take the girl back home after Sunday school was over. And I said, well, I guess so. And never dreaming that it was going to bring me in contact with this other girl. So on my way to my aunt's, I met this daughter of this woman with the 10 kids. And we could see the church house from where we met. And we struck up a conversation. The first time I'd ever talked to her. First time I'd ever had any relation of talking with each other, passing opinions or anything of that kind. And so we talked a little bit, and I looked up, and time had flown, and Sunday school was out, and I was supposed to walk home with this girl to please my mother's brother. And while we were talking, I said, you know, I'm supposed to walk home with a girl from that church. And I said, I see they're letting out Sunday school, and would you let me be excused and go and walk home with her and come back to your house and spend the evening with you? She said, yeah, I'll do that. Isn't it amazing how God can work things out? And I've not ever been around Pentecostal people. I really didn't know any Pentecostals. They're called apostolics where I grew up. Apostolics. Apostolic. No apostolic, just apostolic. And I knew some of them at school. There was one girl that went to school that was apostolic. She said, yeah, you can go walk home with her and come down to my house. I'll be glad for you to come and meet my mother. So I walked home with this other girl, had lunch with her, came back, walked down to the next neighbor and met this girl, and we spent the evening together, spent the afternoon together. And she told me about her dad's death, told me about how that her mother trusted God and her mother prayed and the Lord had made a way for them. I listened to her testimony that afternoon and spent the afternoon in home. Met her mother and liked to listen to her talk. Liked to hear her pray. And I got to know them, and so it was that I asked her if I could come back and visit her again. She said I could. I lived 8 miles from there. 8 miles to where my grandmother and grandfather lived, and I lived with them at the time. And so I made a date with her, and later I walked over to visit with her and spend time with her mother. And in the course of a few weeks, we found that we liked each other. And I didn't know anything about Pentecost. I'd not ever talked to anybody about Pentecost and talking in tongues. I didn't know one thing about it. We grew up in a Baptist church. And to say they didn't shout and talk in tongues in that church. But anyway, we got to know each other, and I would walk that 8 miles from where my grandmother lived to see this girl after I got acquainted with her mother. And well, then we would have a party. They'd have a party in the local country. It was way out in the country, 8 miles from the nearest little settlement. And I'd walk her home from a party, and then I'd walk that 8 miles, get home. 8 miles. 8 miles. It takes a while to walk 8 miles. Something had attracted me to want to see that girl, so I made it a point to go to her house and spend some time with her. And as time went on, I got a notice from the Army, and the Army told me they were going to draft me, and I told her that the Army was about to draft me into the military, and I wanted her to marry me before I left. I said, if you don't marry me now, you'll marry somebody else before I get back. I didn't want to take a chance on leaving her and somebody else coming by and marrying her, and I'd be out on the limb. And she said, well, I'm too young to marry. And I'm too young to marry. I'm just 16 years old. I said, well, I'm just 18. I said, not much difference. I said, but if you don't marry me, you'll marry some other old guy before I get back out of the war. She said, don't talk to me about getting married. Go talk to my mother. I know this sounds strange, but you know, strange things happen to people that God calls. And I went and talked to her mother, and her mother said, oh, I married her when I was 16. She said, she's old enough to marry. I said, go tell her I said it's all right for y'all to get married. I went and I said, your mother says it's all right for us to get married. I was 18, she'd had her 17th birthday. And so we got married. And you know, I didn't see that girl for I think it was 3 years. 3 years exactly. I didn't see her nor talk to her one time after I went off to war. And we made it. We made it. Somehow the Lord came along and got a hold of me, and come along and got a hold of her. And I went through the war and didn't have the Holy Ghost, but sometimes when the bombs were flying and people were dying and screaming, and war is terrible. War is terrible. Sherman said war is hell. I wouldn't go that far, but it is terrible. It's a terrible thing. A lot of people got killed. A lot of people got blew up. Different things. I couldn't begin to tell you some of the stuff that I know about what war is like. And every night, when those bombs would start falling, and I'd think that the next one is sure going to get me, I'd say, God, don't let me die. 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 Lord, I'm not saved. I don't know how to be saved, Lord. Don't let me die. And that was the way I prayed. You say, well, that wasn't much of a prayer. Well, I'll tell you what, you get in one of those bombing raids, and if you live through it, oh yeah, you'll thank God that God spared you and you got out of it alive. And so time went on, and I got a notice that I could apply for discharge from the Army. And so I took it. Came home and went to see this wife of mine I hadn't seen. I think it was 4 years that we had not seen each other. We wrote letters, but we had not seen each other. Nothing. Nothing. No way could you tell me about it. And I didn't know when those bombs would start falling. I didn't know if I'd live through it or not. And so when I got home, she said, where do you want to go? I said, I got a letter from a man that's a preacher. I got one letter on the 4 years I've been gone. One letter from a preacher. And I want to go see him. I want to find this preacher. She said, who is it? And I showed her the man's name. She said, well, that's my mother's pastor.